Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Augie Donnell here, Navy veteran and head of production for Task and Purpose. I've been the producer behind the scenes of the Task and Purpose YouTube channel for years, and it's been really amazing to watch it grow. Task and Purpose was founded in 2014 as a military and veterans news and culture site. It's grown a lot since then, but the focus has always been on covering the military from a rank-and-file perspective, because many of us here at Task and Purpose are military veterans, and we aim to bring you that ground-level view that most of us remember from being rank-and-file service members. As Cappy moves on to start his own channel, we're going to start bringing in veteran hosts from all branches to keep delivering unique perspectives on important topics, from global hotspots and conflict zones to analysis of tactics, strategy, doctrine, and weapon systems, delivered with candor, authenticity, and maybe just a dash or two of salt. And with that, on with the show. Has the US military forgotten how to fight in the snow? That's what some experts like the RAND Corporation are saying, and the Pentagon is worried they might be right. This also comes at a time when great power competition over the Arctic is heating up, and a new polar gold rush. It's why the US Army and Marine Corps have published their first official Arctic warfare manual in over 50 years, updating tactics and techniques that have been in cold storage for decades, while the US has been stuck in the sandbox of the Middle East. The US Army is relearning the fundamentals, like how to build military-grade skis for Apache helicopters, at the same time it rotates units through crash courses at the Northern Warfare Training Center in Alaska. For more advanced lessons, the Army is sending the 11th Airborne Division, nicknamed the Arctic Angels, to winter war games alongside new NATO allies in Finland to put their skills to the test against soldiers that know the ins and outs of fighting in extreme conditions of the far north. The reason for this mad scramble is to update old manuals and prepare for a war in the North Pole. Declining sea ice is exposing more resources and opening new trade routes that promise endless treasures for whatever nation can master the harsh conditions and outcompete the rest. Russia already has a leg up on the US when it comes to winter warfare and is reopening dozens of old Soviet military bases in the Arctic Circle. Western defense experts believe it will take at least 10 years for the US to catch up to Russia's presence in the region. And at the same time, China's Arctic ambitions are encroaching on new rare minerals and trade routes to extend its economic dominance over the roof of the world, often building new research stations in remote locations with suspiciously large radars and sensor equipment. The Chinese state-run National Defense University even publicly expressed in 2020 that military-civilian mixing is the main way for great powers to achieve a polar military presence. China should give full play to the role of military forces in supporting polar scientific research and other operations. Is the Arctic truly a new flashpoint for World War III, as greedy nations compete for new territory? What is the US military doing to prepare for the challenges of cold weather combat after decades in the desert? And will it be ready in time? Arctic warfare is about more than just throwing out an extra pair of socks and a jacket. Captain Nathan Fry, officer in charge of the Army's Mountain Warfare School's training division, told Army Times that there's a myth among both officers and enlisted that go through the school that cold weather experience is the same as Arctic weather experience. In that interview with the Army Times, Fry explained that gear that works well in freezing conditions can fail spectacularly when temperatures drop to minus 50 Fahrenheit. Some think that if soldiers can fight in minus 10 degree weather, that they can do it in 60 degrees below zero. But from my foxhole, I haven't seen a whole lot of forward progress. These are extreme conditions that aren't just cold, but often wet and windy as well. They're hard on soldiers that have to stay alert and exposed to the elements for extended periods, as well as on their equipment. Cold casualties have frozen entire armies solid in the past. Like during the Korean War's Battle of the Chosin Reservoir, over 30,000 Chinese troops froze to death, and the ground was so frosted that the US Marines resorted to using frozen bodies as sandbags. It hasn't gotten any easier for troops in the 21st century either. The sun doesn't rise for days in parts of the Arctic during winter. Solar storms concentrate around the poles, causing random GPS and satellite communication glitches or outages. Petroleum-based lubricants thicken and gum up vehicles or soldiers' rifles, while the very metals and plastics they're made from can become brittle and shatter. Batteries also lose a ton of capacity when they get cold, which has major implications for comms gear, thermal optics, and especially the kind of small drones that we've come to associate with so much of modern warfare. Changing seasons presents their own challenges too. There was a case at Fort Wainwright, Alaska, when an OH-58 Kiowa helicopter sank into soft, muddy ground during the summer, and the Army had to wait all the way until winter for the ground to freeze solid enough to bring in heavy equipment to pull it out. It's a whole different ballgame up there that makes a soldier's life even harder than what he's used to, and that's before the enemy even starts shooting. To lay the foundation for soldiers and Marines to fight and win under these conditions, the Army published ATP 3-90 Tech 96, Arctic and Extreme Cold Weather Operations in February 2025. Like I mentioned earlier, this is the first doctrinal update for the US Army and Marine Corps in over 50 years, updating US military knowledge on everything from Arctic weather patterns and tactical movement over ice to political and economic considerations under the polar regions. The manual also stresses the human advantages needed to succeed under these conditions, summarizing the attitude soldiers should have as Arctic determination. Arctic determination is an individual's mental and physical tenacity to accomplish the mission by leveraging confidence in personal skills to overcome extreme cold weather and other Arctic challenges. Soldiers and Marines with Arctic determination develop a mental outlook, despite the cold, that they can succeed because they have tested their capabilities during training, know the effectiveness of their gear, and understand what must be done. They acknowledge that conditions will be uncomfortable, but that success is possible nonetheless. In other words, it's not just toughness and blind willpower that allows soldiers to thrive and dominate in Arctic warfare, but a learned confidence that comes from proper training, specialized skills, and reliable equipment. The manual stresses that these human advantages need to be channeled through effective leadership that mitigates the risks and isolation that come from this theater of operations, while exploiting enemy weaknesses. To get a grasp on how to do that, the U.S. Army is leveraging the extensive cold weather fighting knowledge of NATO's newest members, Sweden and Finland. Last year, soldiers from the 10th Mountain and 11th Airborne Divisions trained on Finnish skis during Exercise Arctic Forge 25. Seeing a bunch of soldiers skiing around on the countryside might seem goofy at first, but they're actually one of the best ways to dramatically increase the speed and carrying capacity of your average infantryman over deep snow and icy terrain. The Army liked the results so much it began producing its own version as part of an infantry winter kit overhaul. The 11th Airborne Division, America's premier winter warriors that often test and develop Arctic warfare techniques before they go out to the wider Army, have developed a close working relationship with their Finnish counterparts. During the most recent war games in March 2025, platoon leader Lieutenant Buckland was thoroughly impressed by the way the Finns fight, even when temperatures during the exercise drop to -40 degrees.
The way they're structured is unique in that they are very fluid when they move.
Finland borders Russia and was actually invaded by the Soviet Union during the Winter War of 1939. Outnumbered and outgunned, the Finns used the weather and terrain of their homeland to hold out for 2 months and inflict substantial losses on the Soviets, losing only 9% of their land during the following peace negotiations. Ever since, the Finnish people have taken pride in their Arctic warfare capabilities and kept a wary eye on their Russian neighbors, which makes them perfect allies to learn from when looking to prepare for war in the far north. Meanwhile, on the other side of the Baltic Sea, U.S. soldiers and airmen have been developing crucial survival skills at the Swedish Subarctic Warfare Center near the city of Boden. Although it's located just 48 miles south of the Arctic Circle, it gets pretty cold there in the winter, so I guess the school is subarctic just on a technicality. In November 2024, 9 National Guard airmen and soldiers from New York took on a week-long winter training planners course at the school, learning cold weather survival techniques from the Swedish instructors. They are the experts operating in this environment, so we are going to pass that knowledge on to the rest of the New York Air National Guard and the rest of the Air Force. We received briefings on training in subarctic environments, understanding how extreme cold affects both people and equipment, and what to consider when planning in those conditions. As a planning course, the training focused on a more operational scale than purely individual survival skills, teaching the airmen and soldiers how to assess ice thickness and determine if infantry or vehicles of different weight classes can move across it, or account for differences between summer and winter terrain of the same landscape. Areas that might be a light hike in warmer months could be completely impassable in the cold, while other routes might be more viable. These are skills essential for planning movements of entire military formations, and it's information you won't get from just reading a topological map. Passing on this kind of knowledge from Swedes to U.S. forces means American commanders will have better recon of the terrain in polar regions, so hopefully that means fewer orders sending tanks up icy hills just because the guys back at HQ assumed it'd be fine. It's one thing for the boots on the ground to have the training and skills necessary to survive in the Arctic, but for them to truly dominate against a near-peer adversary, they need force multipliers. Existing platforms need to be modified so they can continue performing essential functions even in extreme conditions, like those aforementioned Apache skis. Heavy-duty antifreeze and fuel additives keep trucks and striker vehicles running, while Arctic weapon lubricant gets issued to soldiers instead of regular CLP. Other branches of the military have increasingly been looking into the U.S. Coast Guard for advice on how to enhance readiness in the Arctic. The Coast Guard traditionally operates a small fleet of icebreakers, although lack of funding and priority means we're down to just 2 right now. Cutters regularly patrol northern waters around Alaska for both law enforcement and search and rescue missions. That means the service has some of the most extensive experience dealing with how the cold affects surface ships, small boats, aircraft, and personnel. The Coast Guard also just got the green light to build a new modernized class of icebreakers that can operate in both Arctic and even harsher Antarctic waters. Dubbed the Polar Security Cutter, the 460-foot-long vessels will not only provide ice-ready law enforcement, surveillance, and search and rescue capabilities, but can also keep routes safe for other military vessels. Icebreaking is an essential support activity for naval and logistics ships in the Arctic, which is why Russia has 41 of them, including 7 that are powered by nuclear reactors. If America wants to bring the might of the U.S. Navy to bear in the polar regions, the country needs to catch up quick. Last year, President Biden authorized $11.8 billion in additional resources for the Coast Guard, including funds to purchase commercial icebreaker designs off the market, while the first 3 polar security cutters are being built. Even with projections that the poles will have less and less ice coverage every year, icebreakers still play a crucial role in keeping newly opened routes clear of floating icebergs, or can even extend the range of naval vessels further into the polar regions by crushing new paths that an adversary didn't expect. To make soldiers' lives a little easier when trudging through the snow, the Army just adopted the new Beowulf vehicle from BAE Systems in 2022. Designated the Cold Weather All-Terrain Vehicle, or CATV for short, the Beowulf provides enhanced mobility and cargo capacity for areas that existing vehicles can't go. The vehicle also provides the basis for future recon, medevac, or command and control variants that will take over essential battlefield roles when everything else freezes in place. Originally built as a joint project for the British Royal Marines and Swedish Armed Forces, the Beowulf has proven extremely reliable and versatile in the most rugged terrain. The secret to its success is its full-track, dual-body design that moves and articulates as needed to keep the tracks in contact with the ground. This gives the 6.7-liter turbocharged diesel engine the traction it needs to power through snowdrifts while staying nimble enough to weave through trees and boulders. The CATV can carry up to 14 passengers, or 8 tons of cargo, with a top speed of 65 kilometers per hour. It's also amphibious, without any special preparation, so troops can ford rivers or lakes by just closing up the doors and gunning it through cold waters. Amphibious capabilities also help the Beowulf negotiate the lesser-known but equally tricky terrain of Arctic swamps and bogs, like the mud that swallows up everything during the spring and summer months as frosted ground thaws out. As a combat vehicle, the CATV comes standard with protection against small arms fire and artillery fragments, with the option to add enhanced protection kits against mines or heavy machine gun calibers. Although it's not meant to be a frontline fighter, the vehicle has mounting points for self-defense machine guns, and we could see dedicated air defense or mortar variants in the future, like what other nations have done with their versions. The initial contract in 2022 allocated $278 million for full-rate production. That was reported by the War Zone at the time. However, the Army has liked the vehicle so much during training and exercises that they have ordered an additional 44 units in 2024, to the tune of $68 million. The first CATV models arrived at the 11th Airborne Division HQ, the Northern Warfare Training Center, and Alaska National Guard units in October 2023, just a little over a year from the first contract signing. That's lightning fast by U.S. military procurement standards, and may speak to the importance the Pentagon is giving to the Arctic warfare mission. But all this training, gear, and preparation doesn't amount to much without a cohesive strategy to mobilize troops and resources before, during, and after a conflict starts. The U.S. military has military bases and radar stations in Alaska, but to truly keep an advantage over Russia and China, the new Arctic Warfare Manual stresses the importance of working with our allies. Canada, Norway, Denmark, and Iceland are all traditional NATO allies that feed intelligence and surveillance data to the U.S. Sweden and Finland offer new staging areas and basing options for U.S. troops and aircraft, in addition to the knowledge they've been passing on. And the UK patrols northern waters with the might of the Royal Navy and Air Force. In the event of war, or even a small skirmish in the newly contested Arctic zones, these allies are already trained to operate in concert with American forces. The far north is a hostile environment where every advantage counts. Even just having current ice charts from partner nations unlock operational superiority over an adversary that depends on satellite data that might be days or weeks old. But the main goal of U.S. strategic outlooks has always been deterrence, to stop the fighting before it starts. Presenting a unified front with longtime allies that have a stake in the Arctic region is the policy that both political and military leaders believe will keep the Arctic safe for travel and economic development for all nations in the years to come.